I'm trying something new here, a little more serious, but there will still be jokes, so please just bear with me, alright? Riot has spent years building the world of League of Legends into something that is quite different from what it initially started as. Gone are the days where the lore was all contained within the idea that us, the players, as summoners, were bringing in these champions into an arena to fight for political disputes. Which is a little hardcore if you think about it. The world surrounding League of Legends has become so large that we're even getting an MMO around this world, and as Necrit has put it, this world and lore is already done. Through the vast amounts of stories, comics, cinematics, books, and even through the card game, League's world has no shortage of amazing characters and amazing stories, but that also means there's no shortage of questionable and less than stellar content as well. And with how vast both of these options are, how could I possibly define that one champion has the worst lore? Well, Rumble is, without a doubt, in my opinion, because there's no real objective way to measure badness of lore, the champion with the worst lore in all of League of Legends. Now, before I get too far into this, let me define why Rumble has the worst lore in all of League. It doesn't have to do with the quality of his stories, the amount of things in his lore, whether his lore works well with his in-game themes and abilities, or even whether this is actually fueled by a hatred for Rumble in-game. What it does have to do with is the coherence of his lore through their own self-contained stories and, in the broader sense of the League as a whole, whether Rumble as a character makes sense, and whether or not this is actually fueled by a love for Rumble in-game. Either way, I hope that this video works as a way to show Riot especially there's still some older champions that need love when it comes to their lore before we keep moving forward in the greater story of Runeterra, the same way that I'm going to show you that the majority of the people that watch my content are not subscribed to the channel. As a quick guide for all of you, here's a quick recap of Rumble's biography and the one short story that he has. Rumble is a short-tempered, resourceful, and all-around runs-of-the-litter yordle who relied on his intellect more than his physical strength to survive a life of constant bullying in Bandle City. Due to this, he became somewhat of a loner, preferring to tinker with gadgets and machines that he found in junkyards rather than be around other yordles. When it came to this tinkering, Rumble was naturally quite gifted and his teachers noticed this, wanting to send him to the Yordle Academy of Science and Progress in Piltover. However, he refused on account of believing Heimerdinger and his associates were sellouts who would give humans superior Yordle tech for nothing more than a pat on the head. When a group of human graduates from Heimerdinger's academy sailed to Bandle City one day, Rumble went down to the pier to meet them. After some choice words, he returned home bloodied and bruised with an earful about how he was an embarrassment to enlightened yordles like Heimerdinger. Rumble then leaves Bandle City, and after a few months he marches into the center of town with a large clinking mech, named Tristy after a yordle he has a crush on, and declares that he would show the world what yordle tech was capable of. In his one story, Rumble is in the Shuriman market of Nashrame, collecting different pieces of junk from the merchants and hauling it off back to his own stall after a long day. On his walk back, he's knocked onto his back by a Shuriman kid who uses a cart to move around as his legs don't work. The kid, Anaktu, was running away from a separate group of Shuriman children who were chasing him with clubs. The leader of this little bully gang, Kesu, calls Anaktu Shuriman trash, saying that the Empire doesn't need trash like him. At first, Rumble is insulted that Kesu insulted Junk and tells him to apologize, but after mentioning that he's the son of the governor of this region, Rumble starts to walk away. He wasn't retreating, however, he simply was going to his own stall where his mech, Tristy, was covered up. Rumble boots her up and stands over the bullies, taking a threatening pose just as Tristy suffers a slight malfunction. The bullies see this slight malfunction and start beating up Tristy with their clubs, and as Rumble is attempting to fix the damage, Anaktu comes rolling back in and takes a mace out of Rumble's cart, whacking Kesu's legs and bringing him to the ground. A few electro harpoons, flame spitters, and an equalizer later, all of the bullies except for Kesu had fled, leaving him, Anaktu, and Rumble to have a little chat. Kesu apologized to Anaktu, and after a bit of convincing from Rumble and some homicidal threatening, he also apologized to Junk in general. As Rumble puts it, Junk is not garbage, it's pure potential. Dumb people don't see its worth, but with imagination and hard work and love, Junk can be turned into the finest mech a yordle could dream of. Also in Legends of Runeterra, he does mech pit fighting in Bandle City for some reason. Rumble's main biography lore is quite old, and it's not as if it's just starting to show its age. It started showing its age all the way back in 2017, 3 whole years after the Institute of War and summoners were removed from the lore of the world. His basic biography is only 4 paragraphs long, less than 300 words I counted, and just as a few words changed from what it was pre-Institute of War removal to not be too contradicting to what the lore used to be. However, nowadays, in 2022, this biography makes a lot less sense. The Yordle Academy of Science and Progress doesn't exist in Piltover. Due to the whole Glimmer thing with Yordles, it's heavily implied that Yordles like Heimerdinger aren't actually known as Yordles to humans unless they choose to reveal themselves. It's now impossible for people to just sail to Bandle City due to it being in the spirit realm, so there's no way for humans to sail to it, let alone know where it is. And to be honest, with the new layout of Bandle City that we've been given recently, where is Rumble getting all the junk for his mech? Without a doubt, there's a lot of questions that just don't get answered for Rumble in general, especially with where he currently is in the lore, as he's kind of just floating in space hoping for some more stories, and it doesn't seem like Riot has any real intention of updating Rumble's lore either. The singular story he has came out 2 years ago, in 2020, 6 whole years after the removal of the Institute of War and his little touch-up to his biography. And while there is deeper meaning that can come away from that short story, where you can take the metaphor for junk and compare it to Rumble himself, essentially showing that even though he was junk, he's made something of himself that's better than any other Yordle, the story itself still comes off as quite out of place. Why is he in Shurima of all places to be in for the real world? Why is he already deciding to head back home to Bandle City after that little scuffle in Shurima when he clearly hasn't shown the whole world what Yordle tech is capable of? Why in this story is there 2 times where they use one of his voice lines in-game as something being said? And why do we even have this short story when his biography is still one of the most outdated ones in all of League of Legends? And while the story itself is quite nice, if not a little cringy at times due to being narrated by Rumble, it honestly cements all these unanswered questions when it comes to Rumble as a character. He's way past out of date for an update to happen to his lore. I would even go so far as to say that Rumble is the epitome of the Yordle problem in League of Legends. The Yordle problem is something that I don't think a lot of people have discussed in length, so I'll do my best to sum it up pretty quickly. During the revamp of the lore after the removal of Summoners, the Institute of War, and taking Bandle City off from being a town on the mainland of Valorant and instead putting it into the spirit world, any Yordle whose specific lore tied them to Bandle City were kinda just tossed up into space and left floating there for a while. Tristana, Teemo, Lulu, and a few others eventually got their lore updated in stories, through Legends of Runeterra, or just made generally vague enough that they would work regardless of how Bandle City is represented. But some of the other Yordles like Rumble were just left behind and are still being left behind. If you had to narrow it down to the 2 most egregious cases, it would come between Rumble and Corki. Corki is the character in League's world with the least amount of official lore to him, but I still think that Rumble takes worse lore over him as Rumble accentuates the Yordle problem. Corki's lore is outdated, but it doesn't have anything to it that would immediately say, hey, that's not something that exists or works in the current lore. While on the contrary, Rumble's official biography has contradictions the whole way through. This is why I say he's the epitome of the Yordle problem, and he's been tossed into space for the last 8 years and is just getting further and further away from the world of Runeterra with every passing moment. This problem that Rumble has is made even more clear with his addition to Legends of Runeterra, and yes, while I know that not all things in the card game are strictly part of the actual canon, it shows that Riot doesn't seem to know what they want to do with his character. In one iteration, he's still stuck in 2014. In one iteration, he's collecting junk from humans to upgrade his mech, which is supposed to be strictly Yordle tech, and in one iteration, he's a mecha pit fighter. This is why Rumble is the champion in League of Legends with the worst lore. Now, as our greatest American president once said, complaining about a problem without proposing a solution is called whining. So, how would I, a nerd on the internet with no clout and no bitches, propose we fix Rumble? Well, I have a few ideas. Firstly, let's identify the pillars of Rumble's character. Essentially, what makes Rumble, Rumble, and not some other character. Firstly, a quick-tempered nature that is accentuated by his knowledge of machines and gadgets rather than his own physical strength. Next, a hatred for Heimerdinger for selling out to humans, and a general dislike of humans. Finally, building Tristy and showing the world what Yordle tech is truly capable of. Without these 3 pillars, Rumble just isn't Rumble anymore, so let's get into how we'd go about fixing him. For clarity, I'm going to be talking about how to update his biography rather than adding a new story, as that's where the majority of the problems arise. Pillar number 1 is something that can be generally kept pretty similar to his current lore. Rumble is a run to the litter, he's used to getting picked on, and that constant bullying puts him in a state of mind where he is constantly trying to prove himself to those around him, and when things don't go his way, he gets frustrated. Let's go back to that line at the end of the Shuriman trash story. Junk is not garbage, it's pure potential. Dumb people don't see its worth, but with imagination and hard work and love, junk can be turned into the finest mech a Yordle could dream of. In my opinion, this line should be part of Rumble's own mentality about himself. He's been picked on and bullied and beaten up his whole life. He's been treated like a piece of junk, but no matter what, he keeps showing people that he's full of potential, that he can become the pinnacle of what it means to be a Yordle inventor. I think showing this side of Rumble would be quite simple, but it would also help with establishing himself to 2 other Yordles and to pillar number 2. Let's focus on the general dislike of humans, as that's what also feeds into the hatred for Heimerdinger. This can be done in a variety of different ways, but I think that's best if we do it in tandem with Tristana. As a quick overview, after witnessing one of the Bandlewoods, a place that houses the portals Yordles use to move throughout Runeterra, be attacked by a sorcerer, Tristana decided that she would be the one to defend the Bandlewoods. She specifically commissioned someone to build Boomer, her cannon, and it's currently not stated who, but what if it was Rumble? After coming back from witnessing the Bandlewood be destroyed, she confides her aspirations to Rumble, a Yordle who she knows is good at creating gadgets and machines, and asks him to make Boomer for her. He naturally accepts and creates Boomer out of having a massive crush on Tristana, but then also accompanies her on a few of her missions to help perform general maintenance on the cannon. After a few of these outings, seeing how humans are trying to capture Yordles, destroy their home, and a whole host of other terrible things, Rumble grows a resentment in his heart for humans as well, a resentment that festers and leads to his inevitable disdain for Heimerdinger. After witnessing all of these terrible things that humans can and have done to their people, why would he willingly decide to help them create even more technology that could be used against the Yordles? Finally, we get to the last pillar, building Tristy. Obviously, this is very connected to Tristana as well, so we're keeping her around in this explanation. After all of her success defending the Bandlewoods, she garnered a large level of respect amongst the Yordles, even having people go to Rumble specifically to make more weapons so that they could be more like Tristana. While he's never going to give them an exact copy of Boomer, he's also working on a side project to hopefully impress his longtime crush. Towards the end of his biography, he shows off Tristy to Tristana and the other Yordles, without ever actually mentioning the mech's real name for now. This is Rumble's masterpiece, a collection of a lot of different things that needs to be shown for his character. Tristy is Rumble showing the world that junk like himself has so much potential to be shown. Tristy is Rumble trying to impress Tristana and be like her to help their people. Tristy is Rumble's way to prove that Yordles aren't going to stand around and let humans do whatever they want to him. But most of all, and this might not be something that I've touched on perfectly in this video, Tristy is Rumble's way of proving that he's not garbage. Of course, this is my take on how to fix Rumble as a person who has only amateur character writing experience, so I'm not going to pretend like my solution is a perfect solution to making Rumble's lore a masterpiece. What it is, though, is a start of a conversation, and not just one for Rumble. There's plenty of champions in League who need an update to their lore, and Riot doesn't want to spend the measly amount of money that it would take to do so. Instead, we have to wait years for new stories or VGUs or ASUs for champs that are, as I've said a million times already, floating in space. Older champions need love for their lore too, and I think it's about time that Riot realizes this, because if a champion is so far disconnected from the current lore, then it's almost impossible to put them into the cool new current events and give them the recognition that they need amongst the player base. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Tarian. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, that's great, because I spent a lot of time doing this video and editing it and doing all this crazy stuff because I wanted to try something different from the constant honest truths that I've been turning out. I still love doing that series, and the next video is more than likely going to be the honest truth on Kayn, but I wanted to try something new to just get my creative juices flowing and all that. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, go subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be updated when any new of my videos comes out, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye!